Welcome to the Artist's Work Ethic Podcast. I'm Mike Pelak. I'm a screenwriter, actor, and filmmaker who's always looking to maximize my time and potential as I work to break in. In this podcast, I talk to artists of all kinds who have seen success in their fields about their process, habits, and work ethic. Today on the show is Ted Bowne. Ted is a musician best known as the singer and guitar player for the reggae rock band Passafire. Passafire has had multiple albums reach number one on Billboard's top reggae albums chart. Passafire has toured with bands such as Pepper, 311, Rebelution, Matisyahu, the Wailers, and Slightly Stoopid. I also recently launched my Substack. I'll be putting out some writing through Substack each week, and that's also how you can stay up to date on this podcast, as well as other projects I'm involved in. I hope you'll subscribe to read along at mikepelak.substack.com. That's mikepelak.substack.com. A couple quick things before we jump into the episode. I've talked in the past about myself working on breaking into screenwriting. Please check out blackoilfilms.com/screenwriting. There you can check out some of the screenplays I've written. I have the first 10 pages of each one uploaded, but feel free to email me at theartistsworkethicpodcast@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you a full script if you're interested in reading. Last thing before we get into the episode, I would love anyone listening to subscribe, rate, and review the Artist's Work Ethic Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us put the show out there for more people to listen to. So you keep busy between Passafire, your solo music. I saw you do some production, mixing, and engineering. Do you think your work ethic comes from how you were raised or some other factor in your life?
It certainly has something to do with how I was raised. You know, my mom really pushed for me to study hard and get good grades in school, which I did. And I maintained above 3.2 grade point average through college. I think between, my mom pushing for that, both my parents are very studious people. My dad's been in radio and journalism for many years. So, he's the type of person that will take it upon himself to go study about something before he writes a story about it or reports about it. I think you do learn by example from your parents and your guardians, people that raise you. But once you have the power to compartmentalize and figure out what your work ethic is and how it works for you, then just implementing it and actually following through. That is the biggest key to anything, is following through. You can have the best plans to do something, but if you don't see it through to the end, like with this podcast, you're seeing it through. You had a plan and you're seeing it through. You got to see it through to see if it works or not. I think that's the most exciting part of any project that you do, is like the process of like seeing if it's actually going to work.
Sure. And to that point, did you, along your musical journey, have you had doubts or low points, about what you were doing, and how did you push through those then?
Yeah, of course. There are times when you go back and listen to stuff you recorded 10 years ago, sometimes like 2 years ago, that you listen now and you're like, ah, man, why did I say that? Or why did I sing that like that? Or why did I choose those chords? Every artist is their own worst critic. You gotta fight through those doubts. What some artists might perceive as mediocre art rises to the top and becomes mainstream, and what may be perceived as obscure or nichey or not necessarily like the mainstream gets pushed aside in the sense that not as many people listen to it. It's not shared as much, and it doesn't get the billing on the festivals, and the live shows don't have the huge sellouts and the huge numbers. I think, there are times when you see other people succeed and you're like, how do I do that? And there are other times where you sit back and you're like, I'm okay with where we're at, and I don't need all that. And I could get there at some point, but it's not about looking at what other people have and what other people are doing. It's about doing art for yourself. It's the most selfish thing you can do. Rick Rubin said it best, like art is for yourself. If you're doing it for other people, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. It should please you the most. So,
Yeah. So
sometimes
much of it's like perspective, you know?
absolutely, which perspective gets swayed by what, pop culture, mainstream opinion is telling people to do. And that's just throughout time, that's been how it is. So, what one person perceives as really cool, another perceives as complicated or weird or unique, too weird for their normal ears, I guess. But that's sort of in any genre and any medium of art.
What's an example in your career where you have kind of, through your hard work and persistence, that you've created your own luck and put yourself or your band in a position to succeed that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise?
I think going up to Pepper at backstage at a show that we played a tailgate party outside of the venue that they were playing, but the radio station that had us play gave us backstage passes, so we were able to get back there. And I sort of just took a chance and went up to one of the guys that I thought was part of the Pepper crew or band. I didn't even know. I'd never seen them live, so I didn't know what they looked like. And it turned out I gave Usai, the drummer, like a stack of CDs. And about 5 months later, he emailed us and said, "Are you guys putting out more music? We'd like to talk to you about releasing it on our label." And that was a move that, like, if I hadn't made that move, then probably wouldn't the career wouldn't have gone the way it did. We got recognized by the rest of the scene by being brought onto that label, and the subsequent tour that happened when we put out that album. We toured with Pepper and the Expendables and got in front of people, many people, 500 to 1,000 people a night in places we'd never been before for most of the tour. So that was a huge step for us. Had we not taken the chance to reach out to them, wouldn't have happened. So it's a lot of it is just about how you reach out to somebody and how you address somebody. Don't don't come off as super desperate or over passionate, overzealous. Just give somebody a chance to check out your art and sit back and wait. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. If they do, they do, and they'll call you and talk about it. But it does help to be assertive, especially in the beginning when you're starting out in any kind of art. Let people know that you're out there.
But I love those stories of, just kind of saying fuck it and putting yourself out there and doing it in ways that, someone else might not be
Yeah.
doing.
I
So.
I was on Warped Tour, and I saw bands doing that and playing for the line and following the tour around. One of the funny terms I remember from Warped Tour was signing it to Roadside Records, which means tossing the CD out of the bus while it's moving, which happens a lot with those CDs that get forcefully put in bands' faces. And I understand it, and I've
Sure.
been that kid. There's another story I have, and I won't say the name of the band, but they were opening for another band that I really like, and I was stoked for them. And I wanted to sort of do the whole trade shows, like you come down to Georgia, play some shows, we'll come up to the Northeast and play some shows. And the lead singer of the band, I reached to like hand him our CD, and he swatted it out of my hand. He said, "Get that shit out of my hand, or get it out of my face." And I was like, okay, remind me, like, note to self, don't ever be like that. That's like, no matter what
Yeah.
level you're on, like, and sadly enough, that guy is now the band's not doing anything. The guys had, some issues with addiction and all kinds of things. So like, karma comes back pretty hard. So just be nice to all the people on your way up, because you never know when you're going to be settling back down to the bottom and seeing those people again.
Sure. And I mean, I think it's communication is a fair part of, if I'm kind of boxing us into like a work ethic type of thing, is if you can't communicate effectively and you're just an asshole, it might get you so far, but eventually you're gonna hit a
Oh
ceiling,
yeah,
and that ceiling might start, throwing punches at you.
absolutely. Especially in the production world of music and film and really anything where there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different crew members doing different things. You're gonna need something from one of those guys at some point, and they're going to remember if were an asshole to them at some point, or you know remembering people's names goes a long way. Going on a big tour and there's 65 people on tour. I've this past summer I made it a point within the first couple weeks, and not everybody does this, and I'm not saying you have to do this, but it was really good for me to try and learn everyone's name. So by like the third or fourth week, I could look at every single person walking around on tour and say hi, what their name is. And that goes a long way when you need to borrow gaff tape from that person later. You need that person to come help you fix your pedal on stage because you don't have a guitar tech. Like, it goes a long way to just be personable and be nice to people on tour in any production situation, because it's a community. You're all working together. You're all communicating on a level that you train to get to that level. So it has to be done professionally.
So what would be a typical day for you to progress and keep on top of both, your craft and songwriting and, the business of the band and everything else you're doing? How are you kind of balancing all that stuff day to day?
It's definitely a group effort. Passafire is a democratic group effort, business wise, and financially, business wise, songwriting wise. We like to get together to write music together, but now that we all live all over the place, it's hard to do the physical get together and hang out. We make songs at home, we share them over the internet, and then try to do as much as we can pre-production wise, and then we get together at some point with an idea that's been fleshed out. When we only have 2 or 3 days to work, we want to have like 5 ideas that we can just track some drums, track some basic tracking to, and then take it back to our home studios. I'm here in my home studio. Will has a studio in LA, and Mike has a bunch of studio gear in his apartment in Chicago. So we send stuff back and forth and layer stuff up, and then for the last 2 records, Will takes everything and mixes it and finalizes it and then sends it to get mastered. So the balance of that and touring is so tough, and it's a big reason why we're not touring right now. We're trying to take time to focus on the art, to focus on the music, and why we got into this in the first place. And there comes a time every now and then. We've been in a band for 20 years, touring for at least 15, and there comes a time where you have to step back and look at it and say, are we comfortable out there? Are we happy? Are we okay with leaving our family at home now? Are we okay with the things that we used to be okay with? We're not okay with anymore because we're in our late 30s, early 40s, and life changes. So you have to adjust your work ethic within your band life to work with your home life. There is no home life when you start. When you start out in a band, there is no home life. What is home? You're there for like a week and then you're gone. Balancing that later in life when you have those two things going on is now what we're navigating, what we're trying to figure out how to do it correctly.
If your family side starts to suffer, everything else is going to suffer.
Absolutely, that's your support. it's a different kind of support because I don't want to, I'm definitely not comparing touring musicians to military, but the physical being away part of it, you really do have to be the family, the significant other, and then the kids later on. Everyone has to be very strong in order to get through the weeks and months of time apart. And we know a lot of bigger bands that now, because they can afford it, they're only out on the road for the, half the week. And then for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're home. And then they fly out for the show Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come home Monday through Wednesday. That's the ideal, but it costs a lot of money to do that. So you really have to bust your ass to get to that point where you can afford that.
So what's a goal that you still want to accomplish in your life?
I think just more world touring. We've done Europe. We've done a bunch of random like Guam and Tahiti and Mexico, Canada, Hawaii, but we would love to go. Australia has been a huge goal. South America has been a huge goal. I would love to go to some more exotic places. We've actually talked to a guy about going to a festival in Goa, India, and it's usually happening around this time, around February every year. So we're not counting in on this year's Goa festival, but hopefully we can work it out in the next couple of years. That's been the most fulfilling part of all of it, is actually knowing what places are like, instead of thinking about Paris, like, oh, Paris, Eiffel Tower. No, there's a lot more to it. Amsterdam, you think people smoking weed everywhere. No, the tulips, the canals. There's so much beauty in Amsterdam beside the red light district and the weed. I love the weed. I could care less about the red light district. It's a creepy place to go. But to have gone to Amsterdam and experienced that, like we Passafire went collectively to a sex show, and that got really weird. We all walked out like, oh my God, what is happening? But we went there, we went and experienced it. We went all over Europe together. We've been out to the South Pacific together, and those are always really fun times when we get to bond in a new place, all experiencing it at the same time. So I just look forward to more of that. I hope we get involved in more international stuff.
Awesome. Anything that you want to plug before we go?
We're playing Cali Vibes Fest in a couple weeks on Sunday. And then we've got some dates coming soon to the website. Like I said briefly earlier, we're not doing the big old month-long tours this year, but we are going to be doing some select dates here and there. So keep an eye on our website, our tour dates page, and check out the dates that we'll be releasing soon on the website. And check out the new album, Remember a Time.
Awesome. Ted, thank you for coming on with me today. Thank you so much for listening today. Please subscribe to the Artist Work Ethic podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, and please rate and review the show. Follow us on Instagram at The Artist's Work Ethic,